Wait, hold up. I know you're hovering over the dislike button. Just hold on. Take a deep breath. I can already feel the hyperpartisan comment coming, but just relax. Just hang in there. Today's video isn't going to be about any of that stuff you've seen on TV and elsewhere, which, to be frank, is a complete mess, and I feel that the entire media surrounding the impeachment proceedings is a complete mess because I get to watch it for an hour every single day at the gym. Today's video is going to be neutral and nonpartisan, and by the way, those things are different from bipartisan and centrist. I'm just going to try to deal with objective reality here, and today I want to try to explain the process of impeachment, the goals of both sides, and the probability that this procedure is going to be successful. What I'm not going to talk about is the specifics of what's happening right now. We're not going to be having hardly any mentions of Ukraine and Biden family and Ambassador said this and Fusion GPS and Christopher Steele that and Barr this, and we're going to keep all of the more factual things out of today's video. And instead, the reason we're doing that is because the facts are always changing. There's new discoveries every day, and those type of discussions do lead to hyperpartisanship. Instead, we're going to be talking about processes and precedents and how this process is supposed to work, which is the first part of the video. So let's start off with how impeachment is supposed to work. In short, it is the process of removing an official from public office for some reason. Historically, this is usually some kind of crime, but it can be other things. For U.S. president, I mean, there's a couple of different ways you do this depending on if you're a justice or a senator or in city council or whatever, but we're going to focus just on U.S. presidents today. For the president, the process starts in the House of Representatives with an investigation. And this is the step we're on right now. There's only 3 steps, and we're on the investigation step. And basically, investigations are started, well, historically they've been through the Judiciary Committee, but they can be done through others. But they can start the process of impeachment, and it's a mix of public and private hearings in order to gather evidence and determine if there is enough evidence to support a Senate trial for removal. It's kind of like the House of Representatives is a grand jury, and their goal isn't to prove the president is guilty or innocent, but rather to prove that there is enough evidence to warrant a real trial. And the weird thing about this is there aren't a lot of laws governing this hearing or the overall impeachment process. One weird thing is that there aren't a lot of laws governing this inquiry process, or really the overall process of impeachment. It's mostly governed by tradition and precedent, which just sort of they look back to Congresses and Senates of the past to see what those people thought were proper to do, to see what our framers thought was proper to do when they used this procedure, but little of this is codified. There's very few laws regarding this. And as such, if there was a party in majority or supermajority, they could probably override all of the tradition and precedent and just kind of ramrod through if they wanted to. After the investigation is completed, if the House decides to call the vote to impeach, if they think they've got enough evidence, and in the case of our president, that's almost certainly going to come, then they'll call a vote to impeach and move on to the trial in the Senate. In order for this to go through, they only need a 51% majority or 50% plus 1, just a very simple majority. The majority of senators or congressmen vote for this, and it moves forward. The third and final step in this process takes place in the form of a Senate trial. This trial is presided over by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, who is the highest justice in the land, like the highest judge that you can possibly summon to preside over such a thing, and it roughly mirrors a real-life criminal trial, but it isn't one. Right now, the Chief Justice is John Roberts, who was appointed by Bush Jr. He's a mostly conservative judge, but he has been known to cooperate with the liberal bloc, so he's not a diehard. He seems to be a very reasonable person from everything that I've read about him, which is good. And this will operate a lot like a normal trial. You'll see people calling witnesses, producing evidence, and, citing legal precedent and stuff like that, kind of like the trials you've probably seen on TV and hopefully the ones that very few of you have had to participate in. However, it's different because it's not a criminal trial or really even a civil trial, and the only punishment the president could possibly receive from this is removal from office. Now, if he does get removed from office, depending on what crime or bad thing happened, then the state or federal government has the opportunity to pursue additional charges in a new criminal trial. But since you can't charge the president with a crime, this is the process for making him chargeable, or at least for removing the president. At the end of the Senate trial, the only thing that's necessary to remove the president is a 2/3 majority vote that will convict the president of whatever they've accused him of and remove him from office, and then depending on whatever, a different trial can begin. That 2/3 vote is often very hard to get, and it's essentially designed to force one party and a big chunk of another party to agree that this person is not fit for office. There are some notes of interest about this process, some ones that I am certain you guys have seen on TV, and that's that in the Constitution it says the president can be removed for conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And the high crimes and misdemeanors is one that you'll hear all the time. All of those previous crimes like treason and bribery are very narrowly defined, but the high crimes and misdemeanors are purposefully vague. To shed some light on this, high in the original language of the Constitution when this was written meant high office, high stature, or it could also mean roughly abuse of power. So anything relating to your office that you've handled inappropriately could be a high crime, even though it may not be a criminal crime. Examples of what this was used for, I'm primarily pulled from English Parliament because almost all of these people participated in English government at some point before they wrote our Constitution, so that's the language that they were referring to. And in Parliament, it's generally considered misappropriating government funds, appointing unfit subordinates, not prosecuting cases, not spending the money allocated by Parliament, promoting themselves ahead of more deserving candidates, threatening a grand jury, or threatening a witness, disobeying an order from Parliament, or arresting a person to keep them from running for office. There's a lot of things in there that are sort of not good or unethical, but are technically not crimes, and it's meant to be that way. A president does not have to commit a actual legal crime or felony or misdemeanor to fit this requirement of high crime. It's purposefully vague and generally means abuse of power in some way. Another important note is that in this process, the accused doesn't get the right to face their accuser because it's not a criminal trial. That's something that is just for criminal trials. So we're talking about like the president wants to face the whistleblower or something like that. It's not required to because this isn't a criminal matter. They may compel the whistleblower to come forward when it hits the Senate trial because that's going to be much more analogous to a criminal trial. But at this point, we're just in the inquiry phase and they don't have to. And depending on whatever the majority party wants, that's going to be Democrats in the House and Republicans in the Senate, they could probably change the rules to allow or not allow or demand a lot of interesting things, we'll say. Moving along, impeachment and removal from office is a political process, and it is not so much a criminal or legal one, so to speak. It's sort of like a popularity contest, or maybe the formal rules for being voted off of the island, and popularity is one of the most important goals on either side, and not so much factual accuracy. This is one of the main reasons you see so much of this on TV and in our media, is because it's a big popularity game. Now, at part 2 of this video, we're going to be talking about the goals of both sides and this sort of popularity game that they're playing. The one thing that both Republicans and Democrats have in common with this impeachment is that they require the support of the general public in order to achieve their goals. The biggest part of this impeachment hearing or trial or process is that it's literally a show for you, the voter, the general public. And I say that it's a show, not that it's like a hoax or fake or, it's all made up or blah, blah, blah. But in a sense, it is theater. It's designed to create propaganda. It's designed to tell a narrative. It's designed to convince you one way or the other that you need to shift your public support to either removal or stay in office. Because the only way to remove the president is if enough senators feel pressure to decide to go ahead and vote against him, and they're not going to do that unless a huge chunk of their constituents decide that the president is unfit for office. So effectively, they need to convince either a massive chunk of independent voters or switch off a few diehard Republican voters and turn them against Donald Trump, enough so that they can pressure senators to vote against him so that they can avoid career suicide. The Democratic strategy on this one is, well, basically what I just mentioned. They want to force the public to watch and listen to Trump bad, Trump commit crimes, Trump liar all day, every day, from now until the election. It's going to continue. What they want is for independent voters to be able to see the president lie or get caught in a lie, or perhaps become irritated enough to abuse power in some way that looks bad, and bad enough to turn over an independent voter, mind you. If they can uncover enough bad things or enough bad behavior, then a big chunk of independent voters will swap heavily to their side. If you prove Trump is bad, 90% of people are going to want the bad man gone. This big swing of independent voters will call and pressure their Republican colleagues to either convict them in the Senate trial or face losing re-election. And I do think that this type of scenario would be a Hail Mary scenario for the Democrats. This is like their optimal best case scenario. I don't think it's very probable. They would have to find something super bad to shift Trump's support base or even a lot of the independent voters. And we're going to hit opinion time here. This little block of the video, it's all opinion. Republicans as a group are very united, and they have their beliefs very well defined, and they defend each other very strongly. Democrats are more of a coalition of liberal ideas that roughly overlap and work together. Trump supporters, like most Republicans, are super unlikely to change their opinions no matter what happens, so for them, this only strengthens their support because it looks like the president's being attacked. In order for a lot of Trump voters to swap and force Republicans to impeach, you would literally have to have video of Donald Trump snorting coke off Putin's dick while burning an American flag and worshiping Allah. I mean, you would have to literally, like, him having sex with the gayest person on the planet and then spitting on the Bible. This group does not break rank very easily. Opinion time done. As mentioned before, the other goal is actually a political one. They want to make the president look bad, especially during an upcoming election year, because the Democrats are still pretty salty that they lost the last election, and they're confident that enough bad press will sink Trump and cause him to lose. If they can make the president look dirty, corrupt, irrational, or constantly lying, then he will have no chance of winning against any candidate that they choose. So for this strategy, the Democrats have two avenues for victory. One, which is their primary one, is to get enough bad press out there to sink Trump in the election. And the second one is like maybe they'll find something ridiculously bad to flop over enough Republicans to impeach. The Republicans have kind of the exact opposite strategy because they would rather not like to have their president impeached. President Trump is definitely a political outsider. He was not their preferred man in any of the primaries and still really isn't, and I don't believe the president is very well liked by the old money Republicans or the neocons and some people like that. But the group as a whole is enjoying his very wide base of support. They're enjoying the campaign boost that he gives to their officials that are seeking re-election. He does a lot of campaigning for them, and he advances their policy. Even if he doesn't fit their ideal role or whatever, Trump is advancing Republican policy very quickly. So right now, they view Donald Trump as a high-risk, high-reward potential golden ticket. He's still their man, even if he's risky. And as such, the House and Senate Republicans have decided to sort of double down on defending their man, or maybe triple down, depending on how you want to count it. And they are betting the future of their party on Trump. 2020 is a huge election year. Every year is a huge election year, but this one is very, very big. It's going to kind of decide the path that our nation goes down, in my opinion. So their strategy to keep Trump in office and reelected is threefold. Number one is to portray Democrats as being angry, vindictive, irrational, witch hunting, or just generally being childish, sore losers. If they can convince independent voters that the entire impeachment hearing is a sham, or that Democrats are abusing governmental procedure for political reasons, or worse yet, if they can catch the Democrats lying, creating fake witnesses, or breaking laws in order to get new dirt, then those independent voters that the Democrats are trying to win over are absolutely not going to support them. And for the Republicans, having independent voters stay at home Or if they swap to Republican, it's a win-win either way. They just need to sort of get the independent voters not on the Democrats' side and make them look really, really bad. Goal number 2 is to normalize the behavior of the president. This can be done via a couple of different means, but it kind of boils down to psychographics. It could be, well, the way he did things may not be the ideal or legal way, but it's the best way for the country. You all benefited from these actions. Or all leaders do this all the time. I don't know why we're focusing on Trump so much when XYZ did the exact same thing. Or this isn't really a real crime for technical reasons. And the idea that they want to portray is that we at home know that politicians are corrupt. I think if I said politicians is corrupt, I think that like everybody across the entire political spectrum in any country would agree that yes, most politicians are corrupt. And in this case, if they can erode the faith in government and elected officials enough to where it looks like everybody does bad things, or that the bad things that the president did are unexceptional, then nobody will care because his bad is no more worse than anybody else's bad, and the only people complaining are other bad people, and it's just a big mess. And there's no reason to support removing one bad apple in an entire bucket of bad apples. So it's sort of normalizing behavior. And then number 3 is they want to stonewall for parts 1 and 2. And I know obviously they don't want to just like get their president gone, right? But the longer that this process goes on, the more whiny, the more desperate, the more angry or irritated or hyperbolic the Democrats look. If the Democrats had enough support to just move through very quickly, it would be better than them having to struggle to get support. Also, the longer it goes on, the more people get used to this type of presidential behavior, and so it helps them make the Democrats look bad and normalize presidential behavior. So paradoxically, you would think that the way to go would be like to rush through, just get to the Senate trial super fast, and then just let them not convict the president because there's a big majority of Republicans in the Senate. But oddly, dragging out the process in order to make the Democrats look bad is much more beneficial for Republicans, and I think that's going to be what they do. However, at the end of this video, the thing I want you to keep in mind is that both of these groups win or lose depending on how you see the matter. The media helps and hurts, and yeah, there's online discussion wars, and maybe if they, by some miracle, find some real hard proof of treason or something like that, it would change. But generally speaking, the only vote that matters in this is your vote. The only opinion that matters is your opinion, and that's why both sides are working super hard to control the narrative of the impeachment hearing, because they seek to control your opinion and ultimately gain or lose support for whatever goal or party you have going on. So that's the most important thing. I'm not going to jump into the specifics of the matter, but I just want to reiterate that it's important that you at home understand that it's your opinion that drives or kills this process, and that you should at least take the time to read about it, to learn about things, and to form a reasonable opinion. Personal opinion time, now that I've talked about a whole lot of factual stuff. You guys probably know me. You know, I did like a political affiliation test recently. I'm as blue as the sky. I'm solidly left-wing these days, even though I used to be Republican, and I think this is going to go bad for Democrats. The average voter has no idea what's going on right now, and they have a looser grasp on these sort of crimes or not crimes or high crimes. And even though I currently believe, after everything that I've read, I've primarily been reading the original depositions and source documents. They're a couple hundred pages, so they take a little bit, but they're not boring to read by any means. That these things probably did happen. It's not looking good. The Mueller report didn't look good. These reports didn't look good. But the problem with all of this is that these aren't clear-cut, normal, everyday crimes that voters see and understand. They're often technical, they're complex, there's elements of executive privilege and classification, and it's ultimately too big of a mess for like 95% of people to care about. And that 95% of people are going to get really tired of hearing about this all day, every day. And I think that the opinion will eventually shift that the Democrats are forcing this upon them, and they'll see it as annoying and shift their support over to Trump. I personally do not like President Trump for a whole variety. I could make an hour-long video on that, and I would be happy to see him impeached. But as much as that's what I would like, I don't think that's going to happen. I do not think this is going to go the way the Democrats have it planned, and I think it's going to just blow up in their faces. And that's just reality. That's not my opinion, but that's just as clear-cut, live in the real world as I can make it. Guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something useful. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, and subscribe. Drifter out.